Today's meeting covered a wide range of topics, including ongoing discussions on transgender athletes and the continued hate and vitriol directed at players online. There are no immediate eligibility matters affecting the WNBA. Yes, there are. And we strongly denounce the bad faith efforts to use these topics to demean or marginalize others. In other words, we have no idea how to handle this.
Well, and they say there's no matters at hand they have to deal with. There are.
Yes, too.
Because with Enes Kanter and Royce White declaring their eligibility,
right.
I looked through the 409-page plea bargain, basically sort of constitution that the WNBA.
Everything you thought you knew about the WNBA is about to be shattered. Because what started as a simple statement defending inclusion has now spiraled into a league-wide debate that could fundamentally change women's basketball forever. And honestly, it's already tearing the league apart from the inside out, raising questions that nobody in power seems ready to answer. Fans are already questioning where the league draws the line, what this all means for the future of women's basketball, and crucially, what happens when this explosive debate reaches the players themselves, forcing them to pick sides in a fight they never asked for.
WNBA, which says, some of their coaches have been saying, that men who identify as women should be eligible to play in the league, okay? Now, there's a French superstar, 21 points she's averaging, and by she, I mean he, 20 rebounds a game, okay?
I want to tell you what's going to happen when the Democrats get back in office. You know what's going to happen? The transgenders are going to sue. They're going to sue the WNBA for gender-based discrimination under the 1964 Civil Rights Act that our ancestors fought for. Here we go again. Barack Obama appropriating black justice for white gays. Here we go.
/n, /n.
While Sophie Cunningham, because of the statements that she made about biological boys playing in women's sports, she is getting booed on and off the court. People are being even more aggressive towards her. Anti-trans and pro-trans protesters are now facing off at games, literally inside the arenas and outside beforehand. Meanwhile, at every single interview, players are getting hounded to give their opinions. And then, of course, you have the coaches. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but Indiana Fever coach Stephanie White, I believe her name is, she seems completely disconnected from her players, Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. Sophie Cunningham is going through all these things. Obviously, Caitlin Clark has been attacked and vilified for years now, and Stephanie White has nothing to say about.
Look, the WNBA was supposed to be celebrating the incredible athleticism and growing popularity of women's basketball, especially with a new generation of superstars capturing global attention. Instead, the league has somehow found itself starring in a political drama that feels less like a professional sports season and more like a never-ending Netflix series that keeps getting renewed, not because the plot is good, but because nobody, not even the producers, seems to know how the next episode is going to end. It's a chaotic mess, a PR nightmare, and it's overshadowing the very sport it claims to promote.
The girls were holding signs supporting Sophie Cunningham following her comments about transgender participation in women's sports, and the WNBA ruled that the interaction violated its fan code of conduct, the Storm issuing an apology for the incident afterwards. Sophie, without sort of revisiting the actual issue that brought us to this point, I would just love to get your thoughts on the league's discipline of an owner over a fan interaction.
Yeah, you know, I think I have a very clear and strong perspective on this. With that being said, though, I think I know that people are not always going to align and agree. I totally understand.
/n.
And now threatening to join the WNBA, blatantly proving that women were right to choose the bear. Also, a bunch of Sophie Cunningham. So before anybody gets confused, it's not the setup to a joke about the NBA finally discovering women's basketball. Former NBA players Enes Kanter, Freedom, and Royce White have recently announced that they intend to declare for the WNBA draft, arguing that if the league is going to allow players to identify as women, then apparently they should be allowed to play too, right? So what it is it sounds like these guys are making a statement on transgender women, but they're not.
Now at the heart of this latest controversy are transgender athletes, with the league vigorously defending inclusion and insisting that the conversation should be handled respectfully, which is a tall order when you're dealing with the internet. But while the league talks about respect, critics are asking a much simpler and arguably more fundamental question. Where exactly does the WNBA draw the line? What does inclusion truly mean in a competitive environment designed specifically for biological women? And what are the long-term competitive implications if those lines remain blurred, or worse, completely erased?
NBA facing a culture war sparked by Sophie Cunningham. So the Indiana Fever Guard's mission to, quote, protect young girls in the locker room has become a right-wing flashpoint, so much so that two former NBA players are declaring for the 2027 WNBA draft. Ness Cantor and Royce White both say they suddenly identify as women. Now, White even unveiled a new wig, saying he's in his feminine era. Now, I just want to be clear, no openly trans woman has played in the WNBA. League policy simply states that only women are eligible.
/in.
Having that respect, having that love, and pursuing peace in these conversations, in these debates, because I think that is healthy. Now, with that being said, I just hate how the basketball of it all is just getting overshadowed. I think that you are seeing teams playing at the highest level they've ever played at. You see great basketball, the most elite level basketball this league has ever seen. And it just makes me sad that all this kind of drama and on things that truly don't matter are getting overshadowed. The basketball is getting overshadowed. And so my biggest thing is love and respect. I think there's room for absolutely everybody. We don't always have to agree, but that respect and love definitely has to be there.
But here's where it gets absolutely wild. And it's a critical fact that gets completely buried underneath all the outrage and social media firestorms. There is currently no transgender woman playing in the WNBA. And to be absolutely clear, there has never been a player who was male at birth competing in the league. This isn't about a current player taking a spot. The entire explosive controversy is about eligibility, about future policy, and about what could happen down the road, creating a hypothetical battlefield that's already causing very real damage to the league's reputation and internal cohesion.
NBA leadership announces they're having an emergency meeting to discuss what they're going to be doing with the W and WNBA. We have to identify what it is. Literally, they put a task force together to discuss the growing drama around transgender athletes because they got humiliated. They got humiliated by not taking a position. All they have to do is, Vinny, make a position at the top to say where they stand, and it would have been done with. But every single time you're hearing Caitlin Clark in interviews like, can we just talk basketball?
/in.
What about if the WNBA, let's say for example, they were willing to take it as ridiculously far as you just intimated, and they were declared ineligible for the WNBA draft. From a legal perspective, what's the strongest legal argument Enes Kanter Freedom and Royce White could make?
I mean, they would have to try to play some game of charade of decrying discrimination on in some way, shape, or form, sex discrimination.
That distinction isn't just important. It's absolutely critical because the WNBA's current collective bargaining agreement language explicitly states that only players who are women are eligible to play. However, and this is the core of the problem, the league's rules do not clearly spell out the detailed definition of who exactly qualifies under that wording. That shocking lack of clarity is precisely what has allowed this argument to explode into a full-blown crisis. Supporters see an undeniable opportunity for progressive inclusion and expanding the league's brand, while critics see a policy vacuum that could eventually create massive questions about competitive fairness, player safety, and the very integrity of women's basketball. And that brings us to the part that has people scratching their heads. Why is the WNBA even having this conversation right now, before a single transgender athlete has even declared for the draft? The answer, friends, is that this issue didn't suddenly appear out of nowhere. It's been building for years, a simmering pot of tension, but in 2026, several events pushed it directly into the middle of the league's already chaotic spotlight. The latest explosion followed comments from Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham, sparking a national debate. Then, the WNBA stepped in, and this is where the situation became even more interesting. The league did not announce a transgender athlete was joining the WNBA. It didn't announce a new player entering the draft. It didn't reveal a biological male had been signed to a roster. Instead, the league responded to what it described as bad faith efforts to provoke controversy around transgender participation, and confidently stated there were no current eligibility issues involving transgender players.
As we have to protect women's basketball from biological men, the obvious question is, from who? It's actual men, you know? So is anybody playing in the WNBA right now who wasn't assigned female at birth? No, there's nobody. There's not a trans player dominating the league. There's not a trans player taking somebody's roster spot. There's no trans player destroying the competitive balance of the WNBA. The WNBA is discussing transgender eligibility policy because the issue has become politically and publicly controversial.
/in, 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 /in.
Didn't have to do this. And I think that's what people need to understand here is Sophie is already successful. She's already an incredible athlete with a great platform. She could have easily stayed silent or quiet on this issue like so many other female athletes have. And honestly, I think that would have probably been the safer decision in this case. But we've seen what happens when women stand up and speak up about this issue. There's often a lot of criticism and immediate consequences that follow. People question.
In other words, the WNBA was essentially telling everyone to calm down, to just chill out. But asking the internet to calm down is about as effective as asking a basketball to stop bouncing after you drop it from the rafters of an arena. Instead of disappearing, the controversy continued to grow exponentially, because once a conversation about transgender participation enters the high-stakes world of professional sports, it rarely, if ever, stays confined to the basketball court. The league's anti-hate task force then discussed the issue, raising even more questions. If the WNBA truly believes inclusion should remain a central principle, what exactly would its eligibility standards look like in practice? Would there be specific medical requirements for hormone levels, competitive considerations based on biological advantages, or perhaps different standards depending on an athlete's individual circumstances? More importantly, would those rules be written clearly enough that players, coaches, teams, and fans would know exactly where the boundaries are without having to decode them like the fine print of a phone contract that absolutely nobody reads? Because those questions aren't just academic. They matter immensely for the future of the league.
WNBA is insulated in a lot of different ways as a private organization in terms of who it does and does not allow to participate in its sports league. And so from a civil rights perspective, even if they were to entertain that, they would have to establish their membership in a protected class. Federally speaking, transgender people have not been designated a protected class, but there is a way to get to that sort of legal theory by way of sex discrimination. They, to my knowledge and to everything that they put out, have not yet undergone any sort of gender dysmorphia treatment.
/in.
Down to two things: fairness in women's sports and inclusion for transgender athletes. Both are important. The difficult question is, how do you balance the two? Let's start with the science. Researchers generally agree that going through male puberty creates average physical differences. Things like height, muscle mass, strength, bone structure and density, and cardiovascular capacity. Hormone therapy can reduce some of those differences, but the scientific debate is whether those changes eliminate enough of the advantages associated with male puberty to create fair competition.
Here's the kicker. Professional sports are not simply social institutions where participation is determined by personal preference or a desire for inclusivity. They are intensely competitive environments built around explicit eligibility rules, demanding physical competition, paramount player safety, and rigorous standards specifically intended to create a level playing field. That is precisely why the transgender debate has become so emotionally charged and divisive, because people are not merely arguing about identity or politics in the abstract. They are also arguing about how fairness should be defined, maintained, and protected inside a professional women's league that has fought for decades to establish its legitimacy. And somehow, that's only one chapter in the WNBA's current controversy machine. While the league is dealing with existential questions about a hypothetical future eligibility issue, it's also simultaneously facing controversies that are happening on the actual basketball court, right now, in front of millions of eyes. And few players have been closer to the white-hot center of that storm than Caitlin Clark. Clark has almost become the human equivalent of a breaking news notification, because whenever something happens around her, somebody has a strong opinion, somebody has a camera pointed directly at it, and somebody is already furiously preparing a social media argument before the final whistle has even sounded. The relentless physical treatment Clark has received on the court has become one of the most recurring and explosive debates surrounding the league, particularly among fans who believe officials have not done nearly enough to protect her from increasingly hard contact. That conversation intensified dramatically after a highly controversial incident involving Phoenix Mercury forward Alyssa Thomas, when Thomas made undeniable contact with Clark around the neck area without an immediate foul being called or the play being reviewed at the time, sparking outrage across social media and mainstream sports outlets alike. \n. Now listen to this part. Whether every single hard foul against Clark should be classified as intentional targeting is a completely separate question, because proving malicious intent requires more than simply watching a physical play and deciding that it looks *suspicious. Basketball is by its very nature an aggressive and contact-heavy sport. Defenders make mistakes, players collide at high speeds, and sometimes a hard foul is exactly that, just a hard foul, nothing more. However, in the current climate, perception has become almost as important as the play itself. Fans need to believe officials are protecting the integrity of the game and applying the rules consistently and fairly across the board. If they trust the officiating, they are far more likely to accept difficult calls, physical competition, and controversial moments as an unavoidable part of professional basketball. But if they believe certain star players are being treated differently, or that dangerous contact is being deliberately ignored, then every subsequent foul becomes another damning piece of evidence in a much larger, increasingly bitter argument about the league's priorities. This drama is unfolding even as the WNBA has genuine, undeniable momentum, with record viewership, expanding markets, and a level of mainstream attention that was unthinkable just a few years ago. \n. And get this, yet somehow the entire conversation can pivot completely from one day to the next, sometimes even within the same game. One moment, everyone is talking about a major game, a spectacular performance, or a record-breaking stat line. Then, without warning, the conversation shifts abruptly to officiating controversies, before moving to Caitlin Clark's latest battle, then Sophie Cunningham's outspoken comments, then player safety concerns, then national political arguments, then transgender eligibility, or another controversial incident that suddenly dominates social media and cable news for days. At times, the WNBA seems to have accidentally stumbled upon an accidental marketing strategy in which nobody, not even the league itself, knows what the next headline will be, but everyone is somehow guaranteed to have an extremely strong, often polarizing, opinion about it. That's why some critics have started describing the league as being more about drama than about actual basketball. That description, while obviously exaggerated, because basketball remains the undeniable foundation of the WNBA, highlights a serious problem. The NFL has controversy. College sports have controversy. Even golf occasionally manages to create enough drama to make people forget that the objective is still to hit a tiny ball into a hole. The real problem, the existential threat, begins when the controversy becomes more recognizable, more engaging, and more discussed than the competition itself. And that, my friends, is the dangerous territory the WNBA needs to be extremely careful about entering. \n. Consider Sophie Cunningham as a prime example of this phenomenon. Her career has suddenly and unexpectedly intersected with several completely different, highly charged cultural conversations. Her initial comments about transgender participation attracted significant, often vitriolic, attention and made her a lightning rod for criticism and praise. Simultaneously, her physical style of play and public defense of Caitlin Clark placed her at the very center of another heated debate surrounding player safety and officiating consistency in the league. Then came the inevitable political reactions, the protests, the endless arguments on social media, and the formal responses from the WNBA itself. Suddenly, a professional basketball player who should primarily be discussed in terms of her shooting accuracy, her defensive prowess, her rebounding tenacity, her playmaking abilities, and her team's performance, was being discussed across political media, talk radio, and national news channels.